Hello again everyone and welcome back to the Underground. This is the Intel update for June 30th through July 6th, 2024. Got a lot to cover today, so let's get right to it. Beginning with the Northeast region. In Washington, D.C., a few days ago there was a boil water advisory declared for the entire district. Now, I know what everyone's thinking. Was this due to some sort of malign actor or Good Samaritan? No, this was in fact due to low water levels. Some of the water management facilities were having to switch over and sort of mitigate the effects of having a low water supply during this, hot summer. So they had, due to that, they had increased levels of turbidity in the water, which sort of hinders any sort of chemical treatment efforts. So really the boil water advisory was just purely a precautionary effort, and there really wasn't anything more to it than that. Moving on to a little bit more recent and sort of sketchy story. I did want to mention it just in case there are any sort of lingering reports out there. Last night, so on July the 5th, there were many stories kind of circulating on social media indicating that President Biden has suffered a medical issue on board Air Force One as he transits for his weekly trip back to his home in Delaware. Just bottom line, I don't think the story is true. However, parts of it may be true. Generally speaking, when it comes to anything involving like the president or anything to do with like the White House, like staffers or anything, usually it doesn't really pay very well to get wrapped around the axle with this sort of thing because, well, it's just such a highly controlled environment. So really, as far as the story goes, it looks like it isn't true. However, it's really hard to tell, and it just kind of highlights the sort of things that we should be looking out for if such a large sort of strategic issue were to come about. So I heard about the issue, and the very first thing that I started doing was looking up the HFGCS. This is an Air Force managed communications platform that is a really good indicator of something going on in the world. So usually if the HFGCS, this radio system, is active and you can turn on your radio and check out the frequencies that we know about, and there's traffic on it, then generally speaking, something's going on. None of that happened during this incident. Same thing with regards to strategic assets like E-6Bs, sort of doomsday planes, E-4s, like the night watch aircraft. So none of this stuff was active at the time. Now, granted, you can make the argument that these aircraft can take off without emitting any sort of transponder data, and that is true. However, generally speaking, with something like this, you would probably expect to see them at least take off with ADS-B, because the airports that these aircraft are sort of stationed at are generally speaking pretty busy airports. So usually you're not going to see an aircraft of a strategic nature in the U.S. take off without a transponder unless they're doing training or something and they've well coordinated in advance. But in any case, I didn't see any of that. Air Force Two, the vice president was actually in the air at the time, sort of as the story broke. Air Force Two was over Louisiana heading west. No change to that aircraft's flight path, and that would absolutely occur if something happened to Biden or something like that. And of course, taking a peek around the world to what the Russians were doing, no activity from them, no strategic assets up, no radio messages, no nothing. So generally speaking, the Russians react to pretty good significant events here in the U.S. just like we do. So there's really nothing major from them. So again, all of the strategic indicators that you may care about as a taxpayer that sort of indicate something going on, with the sort of military leadership of this country, none of those indicators are present. So that's kind of where I sort of checked out as far as really caring about this incident. Now again, we also have to consider that a real event like this probably would not be so readily available to the press. If we remember, the Secretary of Defense was in the hospital for almost a week before literally anyone noticed. So, it may not traditionally be thought of as being very easy to hide the president for such a long period of time. However, nowadays they could probably get away with it for a few days. As we remember in the lead up to the 2020 election, Biden basically disappeared for like 3 months and no one saw him. Like there wasn't any like proof of life being, given. So, just something to consider moving forward into this sort of very tenuous election season that's already gotten pretty crazy. You're probably going to see a lot more information warfare kind of things like this, or false rumors, or something to that effect. So again, just take everything with a grain of salt. Realize, having the ability to realize how much a national event affects you is a very valuable skill, I think. It's not entirely easy sometimes, and it's better to be safe than sorry. However, stuff like this probably doesn't really matter a whole lot. But in any case, that's really all I have for the Northeast. So let's move on down to the Southeast. Again, we have another explosion, this time at General Dynamics in Camden. They had a fairly large explosion at the factory down there. They make Hydra rockets, APKWS, Hellfires. I think they make some JDAMs, or Javelins, I think. Or at least the components for these missiles and weapon systems. Anyway, they had an explosion at the factory. No word on what caused it, but it killed one worker and 2 others were wounded. So, again, the cause of the blast is not known, or, I think that it's fairly obvious that General Dynamics knows what happened, but they're just not releasing it to the public for, obvious reasons. So, again, it's never good to have a major explosives factory, defense industry, blowing up this time of year, or really any time of year. So again, just another sign of critical infrastructure being impacted either by malign actors or by accident, or otherwise being affected negatively in some way. Moving over to the East Central Midwestern region, a more political event that I think it's probably worth looking at is in Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Supreme Court reverses their own ruling to allow drop boxes for the 2024 election. Now, this is a very hotly contested sort of thing. If you aren't from Wisconsin, or you're not aware of the political situation on the Supreme Court in Wisconsin, I would say that, being sort of an outsider looking in, this looks like a fairly kinetic political situation. It's fairly dirty. It's fairly nasty. There's been a lot of political scandal with the Supreme Court, specifically in Wisconsin. And this ruling just kind of continues that. So again, Wisconsin had previously banned the use of ballot drop boxes because a state law, makes it illegal for a ballot drop box to exist outside of a polling station. However, people did it anyway, and around 40% of all the votes cast in Wisconsin came via these, illegal drop boxes. Well, Supreme Court back in 2021 or 22 said, hey, that's illegal. And in 2023, the court switched to a liberal majority, and now we have just a few weeks before voter registration sort of comes into effect, or the deadline for that comes into effect. We now have this judgment that makes drop boxes legal again. So we can kind of see how this goes. It's not really surprising at all, but it's just something to be mindful of, that the same old tricks are kind of being pulled again. So, again, that's all I have on that. Moving over to Western Europe, this was, again, more of a sort of rumor thing, but I did want to address it because it kind of matters a little bit. Throughout Europe, there have been sort of inklings and rumors and, in many cases, actually, like confirmed stories that a lot of U.S. military bases throughout Europe have increased their FEPCON level to FEPCON Charlie. Or at least they did for a while. Some have reduced back down to a more easy to maintain level, but for a while there were several bases that were at FEPCON Charlie. So what does this mean for the layperson? Well, really this just means that a lot of military bases throughout Europe are on an increased alert status. They're not on like high alert, like a lot of people are saying in sort of civilian media. Really, it's just an increase in the force protection condition, which means that military bases are kind of, a little bit on edge with regards to the potential for a terror attack. So far, it doesn't look like that has materialized, or that threat has not materialized, or if it has, it's just kind of been quietly kept under wraps. And we also have to remember that EUCOM, the United States European Command, is very large. There are a lot of bases in Europe, and every single base is different. So when you see someone say, oh, okay, all military bases are at FEPCON Charlie, well, that tells me that they probably don't have the whole story, because really not a lot of bases are capable of sustaining FEPCON Charlie for a long period of time, you know. So it tells me that maybe they're at like Bravo Plus or something like that, where they're mostly operating at sort of like a slightly more increased level. There are a lot more random anti-terrorism measures. There's a lot more, you know, vehicle searches. They increase those. They sort of restrict access. They close a few gates, so on and so forth. You know, things that you might expect to see from an increased security posture. These sort of things happen without a specific label being put on them, and that has definitely been a trend. You can see this worldwide. The military and a lot of base commanders, without increasing their FEPCON level, have quietly started implementing, you know, a little bit more security measures, like let's upgrade that security barrier over there, or let's close this gate during, you know, certain times of day, more so than we might do ordinarily. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that we may not get these sort of huge red flags going up of, you know, military forces being on red alert sort of thing. We may actually just see quietly just implementing better security practices, which, you know, is probably not a bad thing, but it is an indicator of the sort of stressful situation that is kind of happening throughout Europe. And wrapping things up down in the Med, let's talk about two very interesting stories. The first of which is border clashes along the border with Turkey and Syria. So Turkey and Syria have been kind of at each other's throats for a very long time, both historically, you know, going back millennia in some cases, I guess, but also more recently in the form of refugees. So, of course, as the Syrian war sort of got underway, most of the refugees fled to Turkey. Turkey begrudgingly took in a lot of these refugees, and Turkey has been having a lot of problems with the refugees over the past few years. Made worse by the fact that Turkey had a pretty big earthquake a while ago, and that sort of impacted a lot of the refugees' sort of, you know, operations in the area. So Turkey and Syria are not on super great terms right now, at least the people within Turkey and Syria. So ethnic Turks and ethnic Syrians. A few days ago, this sort of popped up again, where a Syrian man was discovered to have committed a horrible, horrible crime against a Syrian child, and ethnic Turks freaked out about it, as you might expect, and sort of took revenge on this this horrific crime in a lot of Syrian sort of neighborhoods, if you want to call it that. As a result from that, a lot of Syrians, ethnic Syrians in Syria, started attacking border crossing checkpoints with Turkey with small arms, and Turkey has shut those border crossings down. I don't think they're still down. I think they quietly opened those border crossings back up again, but I'm not entirely certain about that. In any case, the situation between Turkey and Syria is not super great, which is interesting considering the situation going on down south, you know, with the Israel, Gaza, Lebanon sort of thing. So again, just another potential way for conflict to flare up. Now, again, I want to stress that the sort of tensions between Turkey and Syria are not new. This has been going on for a while. Occasionally, you'll have border clashes. Turkey will shut the border down, and it's kind of a non-starter. However, I did want to mention it just in case things get a little squirrely down south. But in any case, I thought it was kind of interesting. So, moving over, switching gears to Italy. The Italians, quietly, with American support, American intelligence support, intercepted at least 2 Chinese drones that were bound for Libya. So, Chinese cargo ship lands in Gioiataro, major port city that handles a lot. Well, it's not a major port city, but a port city which handles a lot of traffic going down to North Africa. Chinese cargo ship moves into the port, offloads 6 containers labeled wind turbine equipment, and the Italian customs people undo the wrapping and find out, wait a minute, these are not wind turbines. This is not clean energy. These are military drones. So basically, China has ripped off like an earlier version of the sort of American drone sort of ecosystem, I guess you should say. It's not really an MQ-1 replacement, but you can kind of see here that this is not a small drone. This isn't a toy quadcopter. This is a big deal. So this is China's version of a large fixed-wing platform. So again, the Italians sort of busted that up again with American support, allegedly, if you read the news on that. So again, they were trying to ship these to Libya for the Libyan National Army, which makes a lot of sense because China's been trying to slowly increase their sort of foothold in Africa for a very long time. You know, China is, generally speaking, China doesn't really have a whole lot of allies, historically speaking, just because a lot of nations are not really well, let's just say the impacts of Mao and had the diplomatic efforts on that front really just haven't left most of the world with good feelings towards China. China's trying to change that, and they have definitely changed that in some regards. But when it comes to Africa, China loves to purchase friends with a checkbook. And this is definitely one way to do that, by arming the Libyan National Army. So, again, very interesting set of events for this week. Let's go ahead and wrap things up by talking about the intercepted GhostNet reports. Again, sorry for this week. It just so happened to be that the GhostNet communications window for this time occurred at 9 p.m. on July 4th. So again, right as people were getting ready to celebrate the holiday and blow some fireworks. So I did not really expect a whole lot of people to be on GhostNet, but there were quite a few. Quite a few people were out there multitasking. Got a lot of Happy Independence Day messages. I'm not going to show all of them because they came in a little bit garbled. I had a thunderstorm roll through my area right at the exact same time most people were transmitting, which kind of flung my antenna around a little bit. So, you know, the things that you have to deal with when you deal with radio, you know, it's not perfect, but I did get one really good news report that came in really solid for just a few minutes. And this was talking about Mexico electing a new president, talking about the EU Parliament, and so on and so forth. So it's a little bit, you know, garbled here and there, but you kind of get the gist, right, of someone talking about the political changes throughout Europe. So again, wasn't expecting very much just due to the holiday, but I think we got some pretty good stuff. So quite a few of you out there were checking in. I saw quite a lot of you, but yeah, I thought that was a pretty good comm window, even on a holiday. So that's pretty much all I have for today. Thank you all for watching. I know that I am terribly behind schedule with regards to a lot of projects that I've been working on. It seems like this summer, I don't know if anybody else out there is the same way, but it seems like basically everything I do this summer has taken 3 times longer than it should. So I will be up on the Forgotten 500, which is our book club offering here pretty soon. Hopefully I can finish wrapping up that video along with the book club offering for last month. So I'm kind of 2 months behind now. But anyway, I'll catch up. I will catch up hopefully this week. And we can sort of try to pick apart some of the lessons learned for a more modern time. These days, it has never been more important to continue reading books and learning and growing and doing the best you can. So hopefully we'll continue on with more of that. So thank you all for watching again, and we will see you next time. And as always, fight in the shade.